Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Sifuna Edwin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would rather be discussing the broader issues about the equitable contribution of the African continent to this question of climate change. I believe that we as African states are getting the short end of the climate action because, Mr. Speaker, statistics show that we are only contributing about 4% of global emissions, and yet we are the ones suffering the brunt of climate change. Mr. Speaker, we've just come out of the longest drought in 40 years as a country in Kenya. And although we would want to have that broad-based conversation about equitable global climate financing, we are stuck here with a very minor factor of climate change, which is the question of carbon trading. Mr. Speaker, also allow me to dissuade you from the notion that you made that time you were contributing as a senator for the great county of Meru. That, Mr. Speaker, in fact, even we in the cities can actually benefit from carbon trading, because you should remember that even if you look at the definition of the carbon credits, it's not just about mechanisms that pull out the carbon from the air. It is also preventive measures to ensure that you actually prevent that carbon from getting in the air. And you will know that Nairobi carries a large number of the industries in this country. Actually, some numbers put it at 60%. If we can be incentivized so that even the companies that operate within Nairobi can then look for measures to prevent more carbon being spilled in the air through sequestration and other technologies, Mr. Speaker, we can actually also benefit as the people of Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, I'll just allow me to speak to the positives in this act, because there are many negatives that we would talk about in the greater context that I've given. But if you look at 23D, Mr. Speaker, this bill requires that there shall be environmental impact assessment for every carbon trading project. Yes, we understand that greenery or plants are a major way of removing carbon from the air, but it's not every plant or crop that you put up or you plant is going to result in just positives. You've heard the senator, I think it was Senator Kinywa, talk about the negative effects of planting eucalyptus trees. We have had the complaints of plants such as the madenge plant in sections of Rift Valley, so that an environmental impact assessment would actually guide us in the best way to undertake some of these projects. You go to section 23E, Mr. Speaker, that they will be required a community development agreement. I have heard some of my colleagues speak to what the role of the county governments is going to be. Under that particular section, Mr. Speaker, the county governments are given the responsibility of ensuring that they oversee and monitor the negotiations of those community development agreements with the project proponents, which will ensure that the interest of the local populations are taken into account. Under 23E5, Mr. Speaker, you will see that there's a provision there that in every agreement for such projects, 40% of the aggregate earnings shall be reserved for the communities. So those of us who are asking where the communities were going to benefit then can see that the bill has provided for those. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, it is also the responsibility of the county governments and the national governments to enforce the community rights negotiated under those community development agreements under Section 23E, so that the county governments have a great role to play, and also the communities have a lot to benefit if indeed these projects are undertaken in the right manner. Of course, for me, I would like better clarity on how we access these markets, especially for private individuals, because the bill only talks about private entities and public entities. We would like even individuals who undertake these projects to have access to
Senator Tobiko Pelis.
Finally. Thank you, Mr.